Today, I'm going to try to draw this church tower in Cardiff, Wales, and I'm on the sidewalk, or as the Brits say, the pavement. I'm all set up in this narrow area where not a lot of people walk through, but it's not no one. And yeah, candidly, it made me nervous. People love to stop and stare, which I understand, but it makes me so uncomfortable. In Talon, I had big groups of people walk past me pretty consistently, which I really didn't mind, but it's different when there's one or two people who lean in close and ask what I'm up to. Again, I get it. I'm a strange man sat next to the road with a camera pointed at my hands. Of course, people are curious or frightened. I'm not sure. Whatever the case, it makes me uncomfortable. Ideally, I prefer to go for spots that are as out of the way as possible, or at least like a natural area for people to stop and sit. But it feels like the longer I do this, the more I become that weird guy filming random stuff, just loitering, casual loitering, no big deal. Anyway, so why did I choose this for my reference today? It's a tower. Not much more to explain, really. No, that'd be boring. Honestly, towers are just really cool to me, so that is actually a big part of it. But also, this specific one has a shape and some details I've not drawn thus far, so I figured it would make for a good subject. Also, can you believe those clouds? They're perfect, which means a nice reference video. If only I wasn't practically in the gutter, this would be the ideal drawing scenario. On the towers, as much as I enjoy drawing them, I think I'm going to taper off of them a bit. I really got my fill in Talon, and not to mention Krakow, and I always want to make sure I'm not limiting myself too much or making these references too visually repetitive, I guess. I'll still throw them in. You'll probably see another 2 or 3 from here. But from here on, I'd really love to slowly decrease the volume. If you're curious about this tower, so am I. I'm useless when it comes to reading plaques and things, as I'm just usually focused on doing the drawing. But according to the internet, this was a chapel, or is, I'm not really sure, built in 1903 in a Gothic style with Art Nouveau details. There's conflicting information on whether it's a church, a school, or a shelter today, so I don't know. Maybe go see for yourself. It's in Cardiff somewhere. I'm sure you'll find it. So I didn't have a great time drawing this one. Maybe it has something to do with the setup, but even beyond that, I was feeling, for want of a better word, inadequate while I drew it. I think yesterday's cottage must have buried itself deep in my mind, because the way I felt about the result of that one is exactly how I felt about the process of this one. Every line felt awkwardly wrong, even though I was trying to take my time, and almost the whole way through, I was regretting choosing this as a reference. I don't know why, though, because not only do I end up liking the final product, I even like what's on screen right now, which was about the point when I started feeling down about the whole thing. Even as I sat there, I was telling my wife about how much I didn't like it, how I wish I'd chosen to draw something else, and how, given another chance, I'd probably do a whole host of things differently. And now I see that I was wrong. This isn't my favorite drawing I've ever done, but it's certainly closer to the top than the bottom. And by the end, I think I managed to even stylize it in a way that I've not previously done. If I had to guess, aside from the sketchy setup and yesterday's debacle, I'd say the extra nerves came from that weird eye to brain disconnect I talk about sometimes. I was thinking about this one way too much, but my eye was doing a lot of the work, which is what I want. So as I'd mark each line, my eye would be confident, but my brain would question it. And it would question where I was going to take the drawing altogether. It kind of felt like I was falling into a trap, whether that meant like wasting my time or messing up some of the details, but it didn't ever happen. I didn't fall into any trap. I think it was just some dormant anxiety causing trouble. And as I've said in the past, this video proves past me wrong. I didn't have anything to worry about. I didn't actually dislike my drawing. I was just feeling whatever way about something almost certainly unrelated, and it manifested in this weird energy directed at whatever I happened to be doing, which was, in this case, unfortunately, drawing. And maybe I actually like this drawing as much as I do because it's so contrary to those prior feelings. I don't know. Interesting to think about, though, especially considering how hard it would have been had I felt those feelings every time I sat down to draw in the beginning, like my first attempts at drawing on this channel. And maybe that's what other people feel when they try new things. I'd be interested to know if any of you deal with or have dealt with something like that. Maybe there's something you've always wanted to try, but when you do it, all you feel is disappointment. I'd be curious to know whether that comes from the objective outcome of the endeavor or are feelings similar to mine today just getting in the way. Let me know if that's something you've ever struggled with, specific to creativity or not. As I make my way through the drawing, you'll notice that everything up to this point is pretty much just straight lines. And other than managing the shape and proportion, perspective has been my only other concern. There have been a few mistakes, but I've fixed a few and ignored some others. But what stands out to me the most with regard to perspective is my current inability to imply height. The top of the tower, where the 2 points meet, does signify my vantage point being quite low relative to the top. And the horizontal lines on the left and right sides of the tower do the same. You'll notice that they're angling down, but I don't do anything to represent the tower's height with its shape as it gets closer to me, as it reaches the ground. And I have a loose grasp on how to do this. I think I just make the things closest to the ground wider. But outside of just eyeballing it, I'm not sure how to achieve that. As you can see, the sides of my tower are parallel all the way down, which makes it seem like it's at my level, like I'm in the middle of the tower. And yet all of those horizontal lines say something different. Maybe I'll just try to implement that widening effect in a subtle way and see what happens. Man, now I'll have to draw another tower. Whoops. Anyway, now that I have the structure of the tower down, I've moved on to some of the smaller details and some simple yet I'd say bold shading. As opposed to yesterday, I've reserved this stuff for a time when I felt reasonably comfortable with the rest of the drawing. And I recommend that, especially for something like this. Also, another thing I did differently from yesterday is the windows. I'm still struggling with exactly how I want to do these, but I'm also kind of enjoying that process of discovery. They're still aggravating. They can make or break a drawing completely, but the learning part is exciting for me. Also, this tower has gone in and out of the light, as you may have noticed, which dramatically changes the contrast. So I decided early on to just notice where the shadows were, or might be, and exaggerate them. You can see that when the sun goes away, everything flattens out considerably, but I don't really follow that. I found the reference when it was flooded with light, so that's what I had in mind while I was drawing it. The overhanging parts of these windows especially casted these big dark shadows, and that's what I went for. Does any of that matter at all? Not really. Would you have noticed or cared? I don't think so, but I found it worth noting. So here we are, I guess. As this one rounds out, I want to take a second to talk about my first impressions of Cardiff. So far, maybe it's not my favorite capital in the world, or even in the United Kingdom, but it does have its upsides. For instance, we got really lucky with our neighborhood. It's always tough to decide where to stay in a place that you've never been, especially in a city. The center is always tempting, and it's probably where people tend to start their search for accommodation, working outward from there until something looks good and fits the budget. But I'd say that Cardiff is not the place to be centrally located. The center has its nice bits, but on the whole, it wasn't for me. It just, I don't know. I don't want to speak badly about it or any other place for that matter, but there were certain areas in the center that felt pretty uncomfortable or dirty or sketchy. And that's just not the atmosphere in which I prefer to spend my time. However, on our search for accommodation that expands outward from the center, we found ourselves maybe 15 minutes away walking. And while I was skeptical before we booked it, now I couldn't be happier. Our neighborhood lacks all of the things I didn't like about the center, and it includes some things that I tend to value very much. So we have a large park practically across the street, which, to be fair, extends pretty much right to the center. But we also have some nice coffee shops, some tree-lined roads, and the best part, it's quiet. It seems like a lovely neighborhood that I'm not sure is representative of the rest of the city. But if this is what I get, I'll take it. So, Cardiff so far, if I'm judging it by our neighborhood alone, I'll give it 12 bronze pears. If that's confusing, sorry. I don't want the Welsh to come after me. And yeah, that includes my mom. Hi, Mom. I'm absolutely adoring Cardiff. It even got 12 pears or whatever I just said. Isn't that something? Wow. Okay. Sorry. Lastly, as you can see, the details are going in nicely. And like I said, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm really liking the look of this one. And I'd say it's pretty different in a good way from any of the other towers I've drawn up to this point. It's punchy. It looks detailed. I like it. But if you watched yesterday's video, I mentioned wanting to get out of the city and explore some of the more remote parts of the country, hopefully see some nature, all that stuff. And luckily, that's exactly what I plan to do tomorrow. We're heading out of town with a friend of ours, and I'm crossing my fingers that I'll get to make a drawing. From what I hear, it's a bit of a hike, an easy one apparently, but still, I'll have to haul my stuff out there. Regardless, I'd really love to draw something more natural, so look out for that, maybe. After that, I'll be back here, but then we're meant to be leaving again, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Cool. So I've already gone on and on about my thoughts, so I'm eager to hear yours. What do you think about this one? And how do you think it compares to some of my others? Let me know in the comments. And also, if you could go ahead and subscribe to the channel, that'd be excellent. We're slowly growing the channel. The drawings are getting better day after day, kind of, and everything is in its right place or whatever. Anyway, that's enough. I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one as always, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.